Hello, everyone. I'm glad you are here on a Friday morning and spending your time to attend this session. So very much thankful to you. And let's start with my session. All right. So today I'm going to speak about the lessons which I learned during developing flows for our customers. Like I have been working with like developing flows since last 2 years, and there's a lot of little things that I have learned which I'll share in my session today. So it's all like real life based implementation learning. So I hope you find all those juicy stuff to develop your flows and few things that you can take care about and think before developing your flows. All right, a little introduction about me. So I work at Soho Dragon. I work as a tech lead. So I manage all the technology decisions for the project that we execute. And I'm also a partner at Soho Dragon. So I opened the India division of Soho Dragon. And Soho Dragon is like a global company. We are based out in New York, Lithuania, and Ahmedabad in India. And we are like IT consulting company. We focus more on Microsoft product implementation for our customers. And a little more background about me is like I started my career working with SharePoint and then working with SharePoint Online and then all of the Microsoft 365 product. And then since last 2 years, I'm also been working more on Power Automate and Power Apps, along with developing applications like Canvas applications and the workflow applications that work majorly with SharePoint. So my background is I started as a SharePoint developer and then being a solution architect and then being a partner at Soho Dragon and then leading the technology decisions for our projects. This is my Twitter and my blog, so you can contact me on Twitter or you can read some blogs which I have written about Power Automate. So you will find a lot of good stuff about Power Automate on my blog. I'm also a community super user. There is a Power Automate community by Microsoft where you can like ask your questions or you can post the problems that you are finding about while developing the flows. And then if you're stuck somewhere and you can just ask a question, and then there are a lot of super users and flow nodes there on the community. It can definitely like help you and then you can develop better flows. All right, so today's session objective. So what you'll get out of attending this session, right? So you'll learn about like challenges that I have like faced while developing flows and how I got through those challenges. What is good and bad about flows? Like there are always good things and some pros and cons of using any tool. So we'll also discuss that. And then what outcome you'll get out of attending this session. So you'll learn to develop better flows. So like there are multiple ways of doing one thing, whether in any workflow tool, right? But there would be some good practices which can help you develop better flows. So we'll discuss that today. So you will also know that, okay, this tool has certain limitations, but there are always alternatives to get through those limitations. So you will also learn how to get through those limitations. And of course, I'll share some good tips and tricks which I have learned in past 2 years while working with flows. So I would be happy to share those tips and tricks with you. All right, I would also like to know like a little more about the audience, like which background are you from? Are you a power user? Are you a developer? Or are you like a business user? That will help me like design my sessions as per the audience. So if you can just post whether you are a power user, business user, developer, or whatever role you have. So if you can put that in the Q&A, that would be helpful for me. Then, so today's session agenda is first I'll share what lessons learned about Power Automate approvals. Like, so if I say, if you're working with SharePoint, you must have like come across at least one business process flow implementation where you might require approvals from certain users and how to get through that. Previously, you might be using like Nintex workflows or SharePoint Designer workflows in order to implement approvals. But now with like Power Automate, which has like built-in approval functionality, so that can help you like spin up flows for approvals like within minutes. It's so easy to do that. So if you have not explored that area, you'll learn a little more about Power Automate approvals and the challenges which I faced in implementing the approvals, which I also like share in this area. Then like the flows that I have like developed are more like communicating with SharePoint lists or libraries. So the challenges which I have faced while implementing the flows that talk with SharePoint on how to get through those challenges and what are the alternatives available and how to develop better flows which communicate with SharePoint. And then lastly, I'll cover some good tips and tricks so you can develop better flows. Little introduction on what are Power Automate approvals, and let me explain you that, a little introduction. All right. Okay. All right. So like in Power Automate, there is an action available which is called start and wait for approval. If you use this action, what this action will do is you get options like whether you want in this approval, whether you want all approvers to provide their approval, or you will also get option that, okay, you just want a decision from the first approver and then approval goes ahead, or whether you want to wait for approval of all the approvers. So you get, that is called the approval type, and then you can provide the title of the approval, then you can provide the approver, the list of approvers who would be part of this approval, and then further details of this approval. Now, one of the challenges that we faced in using this approval action is there is an option called approve and reject, and everyone must approve. Now, probably we had a little misunderstanding that on how this works. So how this approve, reject, everyone must approve works is, for example, I have 5 approvers and I'm sending this approval to those 5 approvers. Now, what I wanted this to function as is let my flow wait until those 5 approvers provide their decision. And what this was doing is it, for example, my first 3 approvers like approved the request, but the fourth approver rejected the request. So it didn't wait for the 5th approver's decision. As soon as the 4th one like rejected, the flow continued its execution and did not wait for the response from the 5th approver. So that is not how we wanted it to work. So we wanted that, okay, whether approve or reject, we wanted to gather the decisions of all the approvers. So to get through that, we used approval type, which is called custom responses, and wait for all responses. So, and again, here in the response items, we provided like reject and approve and reject as an option. So while the user gets the approval request, they can do approve or reject. But what helps here is this like trick lets the flow wait for all the decisions, like all 5 decisions, whether it is approve or whether it is reject. So that was our scenario. So in order to get through to make that scenario work, we use this trick. So in the first trick, which says approve, reject, everyone must approve. If user rejects, the flow will continue its execution and will not wait for further any other approvers who have not provided their decision. So that could also be like helpful in certain cases, but sometimes it may not be helpful. So in the cases where you want all the approvers to provide their decision, you need to use this custom responses and wait for all responses. All right, so this is the alternative, as we just discussed, that use custom responses and wait for all responses and provide approve, reject, or whatever decision you want the user to approver to provide. So that was the first lesson learned using the approvals in Power Automate. All right, so let me go to next. Now we were working for a customer who migrated from SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint online, and they had some like business process flows which had approval functionality, and they wanted to like migrate from Nintex to Power Platform. So like if you have worked with Nintex, you might know that Nintex has approvals, and then in the approvals they have reminders, which would like you can configure the reminders to be like sent every like after 5 days if the approval has not provided the decision, and further like after 10 days if they have not again provided the decision. But something like that does not like exist in Power Automate. So you need to like implement your own logic to have built in to have the reminders implemented. Now reminders is like a good functionality that when user gets the approval, they may not provide the decision like on that spot, and then the approval gets lost in the emails, and approver may forget about it, right? But it's nice to have thing to send a reminder that there is an item or there is a record waiting for you for your decision. So reminder is kind of nice to have, and it's good to provide in your projects. Like if you have an application which uses approval, I would say like reminders are good thing for users to get So how would you like get through this limitation of Power Automate? So what is the alternative is you need to like you would already have one flow which would have approvals implemented in the flow, which will be sending approvals to the users. And you might like in my case, we had a SharePoint list in which all data was stored along with the approval data. So what we did is we created a separate flow, and that separate flow would run on a recurrence trigger. So now what is the recurrence trigger? Recurrence trigger is like you can trigger your flow like daily or weekly or monthly or like hourly. So we configured our flow to like execute daily, and then it would query the SharePoint list based on like which are the flows that are waiting on approver, and that's how we determine that okay, these are waiting on the approvers, and when last this record was modified. So that would be that way we would know that okay, nothing has happened for this record and approver has not provided the decision. So we use like get item action to get the data from the SharePoint list, and then do further like filtering of the data, and then we send emails to the approvers for the reminders. Now there's still one downside of this approach is you won't be able to send the same email which the approval action had sent. Like when approval action, we'll see in the further slides, when approver action sends the email, the user can provide the decision from the email itself. They get the approve reject button and all. So here when sending the email, you won't be able to do that. It would be just like plain and simple email with the details of the request you can put based on the list data, but you won't be able to provide approve and reject buttons in the email. What you can do, you can like redirect, give a link to the user to go to that approval in Power Automate, but you won't be able to provide that approve reject buttons. So user may need to go to Power Automate, like Power Automate in browser to provide the decision like approve or reject, or user can like find an older email related to this, related to the original approval email, and then provide the decision. So there is a little downside still on this approach, but at least this would like, or this alternative would like remind the approver that, okay, there is something waiting on your approval, right? So something nice to have for your application when it uses approvals. All right. So next is assigning approvals to group. Now, when you are working with SharePoint or any other platform, the security would mostly be maintained using groups, right? Because it is more maintainable. You might be using like M365 groups or AD groups, or if you're using SharePoint, you may be using SharePoint groups, so that your security is more maintainable and not individual users are assigned different types of permissions. So, but now the Power Automate approval action, which is like start and wait for approval, it does not like have functionality to provide groups directly in the, you cannot assign groups directly in the approval action. So what is the alternative on using groups in the action? So what you can do is you'll need to first query the members of that group. So based on where your groups are, like there are different actions available in Power Automate, that okay, if you are using my M365 group, there is an action available to get the members of M365 group, and then you can fetch the group members and provide the group members in the assign to parameter of approval action. Or if your members are in SharePoint group, then you need to like use REST API to query the SharePoint group members, and then use those members in the assign to field. So there is no direct way of assigning the approval to the groups, and that would create like approval for all the group members. You need to like query or fetch the group members as per your source group, and use those actions, and then use those group members based on whatever action you used in the assign to field. All right, so that is also like a little downside, but still there is an alternative available. So that would not stop you from using groups for your for assigning permissions. All right, so next, for example, if your organization or the customer organization, if they are using any kind of email security and filtering, like Mimecast, so if that is implemented, what would happen? It may block the email approval. So let me show you. So what would happen is when email security and filtering features are implemented for the emails, what would happen is when the user receives the approval emails, it will look like this. Now, if I click on this button, this will take me to the Power Automate portal for the approver to provide their decision. Now, that should not happen, right? Because Power Automate sends such emails that if user receives the email, they could like approve or reject from the email itself. They need not go to the browser to like provide their decision. So with email security, you might find that okay, the email approval is not working, and that is taking user to the browser. So what is the alternative is you need to bypass the email security. Like for example, if your customer or you are using Mimecast to implement email security and filtering, there would be rule to bypass certain kind of email. So for example, you can bypass the security based on the sender of email, or based on some subject, what on wordings that subject contains. So you'll need to apply some rule to bypass that security. So what will happen once you bypass that security, the approval will work. Now, this is the original email which user would find that okay, this is the request details of the approval, and then if user clicks on approve, they get this comment box here, and when they click on submit, they would not be taken to any browser, and they can provide the decision from the email itself. They need not go to the browser. All right. So that is so this is one of the roadblock we faced while implementing approvals for one of our customers. That they weren't seeing this email approval. They were seeing this, and then after a lot of troubleshooting, we figured that these are called actionable messages in Outlook, and they use some scripting. So that is why the email security blocks it, and that is why you need to bypass this kind of emails from the email security. So without bypassing, I'm not sure what could be the other solution. But at least bypassing would give a better functionality to the user. All right. So one of the most popular lessons learned is approval timeout. Now, what happens with flows? Flows have 30-day lifeline. They expire. They would timeout after 30 days, right? And it may happen in a real world that approver has not provided their decision in a month, right? The approval decision may remain pending. So how to get around the flow timeout, right? Flow does not a specific instance of a flow will not run beyond 30 days. So how would you make a specific flow run to last beyond 30 days? So that is why when flow does not run beyond 30 days and there is some pending approval inside that flow, there is a pending approval, then that approval will also time out, and then approver will not be able to provide their decision, right? So you need to design your flow in such a way that if it's timeout, then it can start by itself. So you can use parallel action along with the flow approval action, and then configure it to run after. There is a run after feature for every action in the flow, and you have to run it after the approval action has timed out. So there is a really good video by Reza Dorani. So I thought I won't go into details on how to implement this flow because he's done it really nice way. So you can go to this reference. I'm sure the slides will be shared after the event. So you can go to this link and get into those nitty-gritty details on how to implement the flows that can run beyond 30 days. So that if there are any pending approvals, those approver can still provide the decision even if the flow has timed out. All right. So this is one of the real world scenario where you can't force the approver to provide the decision within few days, right? It may go beyond due to XYZ reason. All right, next. So we also came across a scenario where the administrator of the application, they were looking to delegate the approvals. So for example, if approver is on vacation, then admin wants to assign that approval to some other user. So we got this question from the customer after we had implemented the application and the approvals using Power Automate. But unfortunately, there is nothing like delegation exists. There is very limited functionality regarding delegation in Power Automate. There is only one thing, that only user who is assigned the approval can reassign the approval to other users using My Approval section in Power Automate portal. So when you go to the Power Automate portal, under My Approvals, you will see whatever approvals that you are assigned. And when you click on that approval, here in the drop down, you will get the approve reject option, and along with that, you will have the reassign option, where you can, as an approver, you can reassign the approvals to other users. So that is how you can reassign, but the user who is assigned the approval can only do this delegation. Now, if I want the admin to go in and do this reassignment, they won't be able to do that. So that's the limitation of Power Automate currently. I hope we get some updates on this. All right, so one of the issue that we face with start and wait for approval action is it has a property called retry policy. So retry policy is good for HTTP actions, like HTTP actions sometimes may fail, and then you may want to let your flow try that, okay, if it has failed one time, it may work second time. So that is how the Power Automate retries a specific action if it has failed or timeout. So so that is why the retry policy is here. But now with approvals, if you have a retry policy and somehow your approval failed or somehow it timed out, it will send the approval again, which we did not want it to happen, because user got confused at why they are receiving same approval again and again. So that is why we did not want that to happen. So we had to disable the retry policy by setting the value as none. So something like little thing, you may also want to test while you're developing your flow on how the retry policy would affect your flows when you're using approvals. So something to ponder about, think about. So that is why I added this in my lessons learned. All right. So, okay, so that was about the lessons learned about the Power Automate approvals. I hope this has added some value. So I don't have live demos, but I have added screenshot, but it is more about juicy stuff I'm talking about on what I have learned. So keep all your ears open and focus on those small details. And I hope this adds some value to you to develop your flows.
Can I just jump in? Sorry, and we've got a couple of questions regarding that section. So the first question is similar to the approval timeout. Is how do you handle approvals expected to last longer than the timeout limit 30 days because it terminates and stops waiting for responses afterwards? How would you look at
right, so you can't control the flow to go beyond the timeout period, which is 30 days. You have to implement the logic inside your flow so that your flow restarts. You call the flow again in that flow. So for example, I have an approval action in my flow, and then I would add a parallel action in my flow along with the approval action, that parallel action will only run when my approval action has timed out. So what would happen is when flow expires in 30 days, it will first time out the approval action. So when approval action gets time out, the parallel action which is configured to run after the timeout of the approval action will be triggered. So what that parallel action will do is it will I'll need to call use run a child flow action to call the flow again, and I have to design the logic of my flow to resume from the previous state of the flow. So probably you can store the status of the flow in the SharePoint list so that flow knows, okay, it was a timeout thing that had happened previously, and the flow needs to resume again from the last status. So you need to query the status from the SharePoint list or whatever data storage you are using, and then design the flow that way. So I also gave the link from Reza Dorani. He has a good video about it, and he's explained nicely about it. So that is in my presentation. So once the presentation slide is shared, or you can quickly look up his video as well. So he explains it nicely. So if I had covered explaining all the implementation scenarios about it, I think I would have taken up all the session time to explain it. So that's why I didn't go into the details of how to implement it, because he's already done it nicely, and we also use some ideas from his video as well. So that's how you could go into like nitty-gritty details in for from his video.
Lovely.
Does
Okay.
it help? Yeah.
Second question. Regarding approvals and flow. So I have a list of users I would like to ask and then record their timesheet data for the previous day. Can I use approvals to do this for each user?
Sorry, if you could repeat that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I have a list of users I would like to ask and then record their timesheet data for the previous day. Can I use flow approvals to do this for each user?
So I'm not sure how you want approvals to be used here. Like, for example, do you want to like do that user fills in their timesheet and then it sends it for approval to their manager or something like that? Then of course you can do it. You can implement the flows that for example, if you have timesheet in Power Apps, then let the user fill up their timesheet in Power App. And then from Power App, you can like trigger the flow and then start an approval. And then approval probably could be sent to set of users or the user's manager. And then you can further design the flow to act accordingly.
Lovely. Okay, next question. So with email security, blocking email approvals, do all users have to set up the rule on Outlook themselves, or is this something that can be done on an organization level?
No, it needs to be done in the mail exchange configuration. So there must be something implemented by IT for security, email security and filtering. So it will need to be done by IT. It won't be done by user. So we faced when we faced this issue, it was like specific Mimecast issue which IT had implemented to implement the email security and filtering. There are also other tools available to implement security and filtering. So based on what tool is used inside that tool, you'll need to go and like bypass.
And last question regarding the approval center. Is the approval center auditable, so it's able to track who, when, and what was approved at a system owner level?
I'm not sure about that, but probably like Office 365 audit log, if that has those details, then you can get it from there. But or else, if Microsoft is like doing the recording that audit, then you can get it from there. But you can't implement your own logic in there to do the auditing. But I'm sure there must be something in the Microsoft 365 audit portal.
Great. Lovely. Okay, that's all the questions for now.
All right, thank you. All right, so let me go ahead with the lessons learned while communicating with SharePoint from flows. So first of all, like we had a scenario where we were updating SharePoint data, like SharePoint list items or SharePoint documents back from Power Automate to SharePoint. So initially there is an update item action available in Power Automate to update the data back to the SharePoint list or document library. So initially we used that, but we saw some it wasn't functioning the way we wanted it to, and we saw some limitations with that action. So that is why there is an other alternative available. Is you can use REST API with send an HTTP request to SharePoint action to update the SharePoint data. So there are two. One is use the update action and get the things done. So if you have like a small flow and a small list which does not have too many columns, of course you can use that and you will get your work done. But when your list is large and you just want to like update specific column in that specific update, then I would recommend that use REST API. Now let's understand what are the differences between both of the approaches, right? All right, so this is the update item action, and this is using REST API from the send HTTP request to SharePoint action. So what happens with update item action is you need to provide values of all the mandatory columns, whether you want to update those columns or not. For example, I have a title column in my SharePoint list, and I want to just update another column called cost. So I don't want to update the title column, but now title column is a mandatory column. So update action will require me to provide a value for the title, even though I don't want to update it. I just want to update the cost column, right? So update item will force me to provide the value for the title. And opposed to in REST API, if I want to update the cost column, I'll just provide the value of the cost column. So that is the major difference between both of approaches. Now update item also lets you select the views to limit the columns you want to update. Now, but if there is a large flow and if you are updating like specific columns based on specific scenarios in your large flow, then what would happen is you will end up creating too many views. That is also like more overhead you would be creating for yourself. So, but again, the advantage of using update item is it is really easy to use for a novice user or a business user. REST API is little tricky because you need to know the syntax and all, and then if one comma is here and there or one quote is here and there, it won't work. So you need to be very detailed oriented when you are like using REST API and need to understand a little syntax around it on how to use REST API. All right. Then sometimes we also faced issues that few columns we had left blank in the update item because we did not wanted to update the values of those columns, but then those column values went blank. So for example, first the item is created or all the column values are filled in by the user, and now Power Automate goes to update the SharePoint list, and I just want to update one cost column, right? So, but using update items, still there would be columns lying around there, and Power Automate like made the values of the column blank in the SharePoint list. So this was not like an like every time kind of happening scenario, but it did happen for like few times, and then we thought we might mess up the data the user has entered. So we preferred using REST API, which gives us control on what we want to update back in the list. So now let's look at the sample of how to do both of it. All right. So this is the update item action, which takes a SharePoint site address and the list name and the ID ID of the item which I want to update. Here I can select the columns which I want to update based on the view. And then if you see the title here, I just want to update the value approved equals to yes. But now as the title is mandatory, I need to provide the value of the title. Otherwise Power Automate won't let me save the flow. Okay. So that's the limitation I'm talking about. Now here let's see at the REST API option. So REST API I can use within the send HTTP request to SharePoint action, where I have to select the site address. Method as post because I'm sending an update, like I want to update data in SharePoint. So that is why I'm using post method. And then there is a syntax on the URL for the REST API. So I have to use this syntax in order to update the item. So this needs to be well written. You can't miss the quotes or the slashes or the brackets here. So that is one thing need to be taken care of. And also I need to provide the specific headers in order to like make my request successful. And this is the payload, like this payload contains the columns that I want to update. Now here I am updating a Boolean value. Excuse me. So here I am updating a Boolean value. That is why I have provided the value for column approved as true. Now if the format of the value provided for the column will depend on the data type of the column. So for example, I'm updating a hyperlink value, it will be provided in a different format. If I'm updating a lookup value, it will be provided in a different format. So this is kind of a limitation, not a limitation, but a little learning curve required for the user to use REST API. But once you figure out the syntax and once you understand this approach, this will really help you to update only that data which you want to send update in this in your list item. So in long run, there is a learning curve, but it would be helpful to you. And this has got a lot of powerful, like once you figure out REST API, not just update item, you can do a lot of stuff using REST API when communicating with SharePoint. All right, so that was about updating items. Now let's go to trigger conditions. So what are trigger conditions? Trigger conditions are commonly like when you are using when item is created or modified triggered for SharePoint list, right? So with each SharePoint item update, your flow is triggered, but you may not want your flow to trigger for each and every update, right? So what happens is you can configure trigger conditions. And here is a sample trigger conditions I have here, which says if my column approved is set to true, that's when my flow will trigger. In other updates, I just don't want my flow to trigger, right? So that will also save my flow run and also like avoid junk in the flow history. So this is one cool feature about the triggers. So if you want your flow to trigger in only specific conditions based on the data, so this is not just limited to SharePoint. If you're working with like Dataverse or CDS, same way you can configure the trigger conditions for those data sources as well. So not just limited to SharePoint, but this is really nice feature which you should use. Also will save you flow runs, because if you are like using M365 licensing for flow, you get only like 2000 flow runs per user per day, right? So you may also want to save your flow runs. So that is how trigger conditions are helpful to save the flow runs and like avoid unhelpful run history, right? So that's one cool feature of triggers. All right, then there would be also scenarios where you want to like get the changes on whether something has updated, like has the status updated or has the title updated. If you want to determine that, then you can use get changes. There is a get changes actions which helps you determine what has updated in your SharePoint list, right? So for that, you need to use when an item or file is modified trigger. It is like necessary to use only this trigger. There are also other triggers like when item is created or when item is modified. With those triggers, this get changes won't work. So for get changes, you need to use this trigger. So this is how it will work. So you have this trigger when an item or file is modified. Then you add an action called get changes for item or a file. So this will work with both lists and libraries. Provide the site address. You select the document library or the list. You provide the item ID from the trigger, and you also provide the trigger window values from the trigger. All right. And then you can add a condition saying that has my status column changed or has my title column changed or whatever column you have in your list. So this requires versioning to be turned on your list and library. If you want to make this functionable, then you need to turn on versioning on your list and library. Now you will ask me that what is the difference between trigger condition and get changes. So now what happens is trigger condition, if for example, let me go back. Here I am saying that my trigger condition is to trigger the flow whenever approved is true. So for example, the first time item is updated and it is set to approve true, then my flow will trigger. Now in the next update, my approval column is set to true. It has not changed, but the title value has changed. Still my flow will trigger because like the approved column value is true and the title has changed. So whenever your column which you are checking here, it's not necessary in trigger condition that column has changed, and that is why your trigger is like triggering the flow. All right, it's just that when the column value is this and the flow the item is modified, your flow will trigger. So in combination of get changes and trigger conditions, what happens is you can mix both of it and implement the logic. For example, I just want my flow to trigger when status is kind of approved. And I don't want my flow to trigger again when the status is approved and something else has changed, right? So that way, implement the trigger conditions and put the trigger conditions in a way that approve the call status is approved, and then again add the get changes action to your flow and determine here whether the status column value has actually changed this time or not. So that way you can implement further logic in your flow. So that was the basic difference. Like this is really helpful to unnecessarily avoid your flow to run and then make updates or trigger the flow. All right. Then next thing is get items. So you may end up, while working with SharePoint, you may end up using this action to get data from the SharePoint. So there are some good practices which you can learn here on how to use this action. One is use filter query. So whenever you want to get data from SharePoint using get items, use some filter query so that it gets filtered data from the SharePoint. It just does not get the whole SharePoint list data. So there must be something that you may want to filter your data and get that data. So also one thing is use internal column name in the expressions in the filter query. I have this point again, so I'll cover more on that. Then limit, if you can limit, then limit the number of rows using the top count, so you don't like flood the flow with like thousands of items. Then avoid using apply to each loop. I have this is in my next slide, so I'll cover that later. Then the filter query will not work on calculated columns. So use the filter array action to further filter the items. And lastly, when your column, which you are frequently using in the filter query, it's good to index that column to improve the performance of the get item. So for example, if you want to filter the SharePoint list data, which you have got from the get items, and you want to filter via calculated column, you won't be able to do that via filter query. So that's how you use filter array action here. You provide the list of items from get items, and you select the column here, and you select what value you want to filter on, and then you process the data based on what you got from SharePoint. All right. Then if you want to compare the previous and current values, for example, you want to know, okay, with this update, what was the previous value of this of the column? Then you can query the version history using REST API. So this is the get version syntax to get the version, and syntax to get the specific column value. So this is helpful when you want to like compare the old value and the new value, kind of a logic in your flow. All right. Then use internal column names. So what happens is like if you want to use columns in filter query or the expressions or filter query in the REST API or REST API payload, if you want to update the column, then you need to use the internal name of the columns. You can't use the display name. So for example, in this example, I have the column name called email, but the internal column name is title. So if I use email everywhere, I'll get an error that this column does not exist. So you might wonder that, okay, what is going wrong? Because you need to use title column. So if you see the flow expressions which you select from the dynamic content, you will also see there it is also using internal column names. So how to get the internal column name? So you need to go to the list settings, then click on specific columns and then look at the browser URL and whatever name appears after the field. So here I am on the list settings. I have clicked on the column and I'm looking at the browser URL, and this is the internal column of the name. So if you've worked with SharePoint since long, you might already know this. All right. So that was about lesson learned. Now, few tips and tricks. One is to avoid apply to each loop. So apply to each action is makes your flow slow because it requires a little more processing. So then you can avoid. One is if you just want to, if your query, for example, get items, is you know it is going to return only one item, right? In that case, you don't need to use apply to each. You can directly like use the first expression to get the first item from the collection. So that way you can avoid. Sometimes you may want to like process the whole collection and you won't be able to avoid it. So in that case, avoid using variables inside apply to each as much as you can. Then there is also another trick I'll discuss in next slides on how to prevent, how to use other actions instead of apply to each. Avoid too many variables inside apply to each. Then it makes the performance slow. That is why you need to avoid it. Then use select action and join operation to process the collection. So for example, here I'm getting the rows of data from SharePoint. The rows of data is email addresses in the SharePoint list. So here, this is an inefficient way to do it. I'm getting the data from SharePoint. I'm initializing variable to store the email addresses in the variable. Then I'm concatenating each data by looping through each row and setting it in the variable. But there is more efficient way to do this is using select action, where I will select the data from SharePoint list and I just want the title column values. And then I'll join the data by semicolon. So this will give me the email addresses from title column or from my SharePoint list rows and join it by in a string by semicolon. So something that I have to use lot of actions and something I can use doing only 2 actions, right? So also makes your flow size less. There are only 500 actions available. You can add to a specific flow, right? So that it helps in improving the performance as well as making the size of flow, like number of actions, less in the flow. All right. Then when a flow is triggered by user, so for example, flow is triggered from a Power App or flow is triggered by user from SharePoint by selecting the item and then selecting the flow to trigger. What will happen here? The flow will run under the context of that user. And if your flow is like doing something that user does not have permissions, for example, like adding a user to a group or creating a site from the flow, and user does not have permissions to do that, then your flow will fail. So what you can do in that case is you can create a parent flow and a child flow. So create a parent flow with the user trigger. So whatever Power App or selected item or button trigger you are using, then create another child flow which will perform those elevated access operations in the child flow, like creating a site or assigning permissions to the user. Then you can like call the child flow from the parent flow using HTTP connector. And if the flow is part of solutions, you can use run a child flow action to call the child flow from the parent flow. All right.
Sorry, yes. I'm just going to do a time check here as we're coming up to 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So if you've got any quick bits that you'd like to finish, then feel free. If not, we'll be.
Okay. Can I get 5 more minutes or?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. We're just getting the next speaker in. Yep.
All right. All right. So for example, if you need inputs from the user in email, then you can use Outlook actionable messages. What is Outlook actionable messages? It's kind of an adaptive card. It requires you to develop 2 flows in order to use actionable messages. One is the flow which will send an adaptive card to the user. This is kind of an adaptive card which I developed for my scenario to get the inputs from the user from the email. And then other is second flow which will trigger when I click on this submit button and will record the input of whatever user has provided in the email. So this is a good trick when you want input from the user. Aside from the approvals, you just want to gather data from the user from emails, you can use this trick. This requires HTTP action, which is a premium connector. So be mindful of using this if you have premium connectors. And also there is a reference link on details on how to build this kind of a flow. All right. One good thing is, for example, you can, you're using client ID and client secret in your flows for Graph API or any other API, you may want to secure the inputs and the outputs in your flow. So there is a nice configuration available for the actions to secure inputs and outputs, so that when your flow runs and user goes to the flow run, those values won't be shown to the user in the flow runs. So this is some nice feature provided by Power Automate. Then error handling, of course, you may want to do error handling in your flows to better manage the flows, and then you yourself get to know about the error before the user is reported, right? So you can use scope actions and you can use configure run after actions. So here I have two scope actions, which is one called main scope, which has the main logic of the flow, all the actions added inside this scope action. And then I have handle error, which has like what to do when the error occurs, right? So handle error I am configuring to run after the main scope has failed or timeout. That way, when main scope fails or the main scope timeouts, this handle error action will be triggered and it will do like send an email or send a message to the user. All right. Few tips about, so those were tricks. Few tips about developing flows. One is use compose action instead of variables as much as you can, because variables makes the flow like slow. So use compose actions. Check for null values when you are getting the data from external sources. Otherwise, your flow will fail when the data is null written by the external sources. Use expressions instead of multiple actions or switch action. That will save you number of actions added to the flow. So expressions are difficult, but once you get hold of it, it really helps. Then name your actions appropriately. Use service accounts in the connections. Don't use your own accounts. Great ways to create the flow with service account and share it with co-owners, and then co-owners further edit it. So that way, that is the best practice you can follow. All right, yeah, that was about it. I know I had to run through like from the last, so I don't run over. But if you have any more questions, I'm happy to like answer. Luke, if there are any questions, let me look.
There doesn't seem to be any outstanding questions at this time.
Okay.
So.
All right. Yeah. So I would say thank you for your time. Please fill out the survey, and you'll win some outstanding swag. And thank you for attending, and thank you for your time.